everybody. Welcome back to Turnpike Fantasy Football 2013. I'm League Commissioner Kevin Mabula, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wow, thank God he's still alive. No, I'm not feeling like that this year, guys. And yes, I know my team isn't performing quite as I expected it. I'm not letting it bother me this year. I'm feeling good about the season. I'm feeling good about all you guys. I feel good that so many of you are out there are really contending, and only a couple of us bottom feeders are still out there. I do want to congratulate Mike Bond, however, who has been really self-congratulating himself this past week over his Nate Washington pick. He thinks he just won the league by inserting him in his starting lineup. I just want him to have a nice cold dose of reality that he's only won one game and he will not make the playoffs this year. I will not make the playoffs. A certain bald, old, miserable, cantankerous, ever vacationing someone also will not be making the playoffs this year. But I do want to focus on you guys a little more this season. Unless a miracle happens, I know I'm not even going to make the playoffs. So I'm going to take a little bit of a different tone this season for the rest of the commentary. Instead of doing commentary, I'm going to do more of just a color analyst type thing of what I want to do with you guys, show you guys what I'm thinking of each of your teams, kind of even maybe make predictions on each of your games each week, because my team stinks and I need something to keep me interested in the rest of the season. So let's start off right away with the game last week. And of course I want to talk about Anthony Parisi's Woodbury Wankers taking on Matt Dreyfus's Fishtown Off in a Corner. And one thing I can tell you is Anthony did not beat Off in a Corner. He usually prefers to do it right in the middle of the room in front of everybody. But Matt won this one 112-98. Matt got 39 points out of his wide receiver, Victor Cruz, and it seems to be that if Victor Cruz performs for him, Matt's team wins. If you look at Matt's wins, Victor Cruz did phenomenally in those games. In his loss, that would be where Cruz took the day off, basically. He also got 27 points out of his other wide receiver, Torrey Smith, and 17 points out of his Arizona Cardinal defense. Where Anthony got 29 points out of Matt Forte, 27 points out of his other running back, Reggie Bush, and 26 out of his quarterback, Tom Brady. So there you go. You're starting to see a little separation there. Anthony falling back into the middle of the pack. Matt staying up a rung ahead of everybody. Now, Matt, I'll be honest with you. Out of the top contending teams, your team is a little lax as opposed to some of the other ones. As I just mentioned, Victor Cruz is basically your team, and when he doesn't perform, there's really nobody else who's going to really pick up the mantle for you. I would be trying to maybe make a trade. I don't know. Maybe I have people available. Let's see what's out there. Up next, we've got Brian Sheehan's 1 gram equals a pound taking on Jeffrey Hezekawi, Golden Bombs Hamilton Square Chiefs. And Brian continues his roll. This one he wins 118-81. Brian got 31 points out of that awesome pick, tight end Jimmy Graham. 17 points out of his running back Marshawn Lynch, and 16 points out of his quarterback Robert Griffin III. Where Jeffrey got 22 points out of his Denver Bronco defense, 20 points out of Des Bryant, and 11 points out of Russell Wilson III. With that win, Brian moves to 3-1 as well, and actually has a very strong team moving forward. Looks very playoff bound, very, very strong, a very serious contender for a championship. Where Jeff goes to 0-4, and basically will be in the coming match this week facing myself, known as the Abyss match. We are going to bring that moniker back this week because Jeff's 0-4 team is taking on my 0-4 team, and I am 0-4 now because of John Moore's Downingtown Destroyers beating my Warriors of Babylon 124-107. John, I want to congratulate you in this one for winning this one. I know that you take great pride in beating me. I know that you study the history of head-to-head matchups, and I'm sure you know the exact total collective score that each of us have scored over the past 6 years. You got 31 points out of your tight end, Tony Gonzalez. You got 31 points out of your Tennessee Titans defense, and you also got 13 points out of 15 points rather out of Colin Kaepernick. Where I got 23 points out of Campbell Tompkins, 16 points out of Julian Edelman's. I got 30 points out of the Colts defense, and I also got 16 points out of my quarterback, Michael Vick. Up next, you had the Long Bowl, and I'm sure that this was an exciting home to be in this past weekend in the Long residence when Daddy Long Chris took on his oldest son Kenny when the Asgardian Thundergods visited the Gladiators, and the Gladiators won this one 165 to 121. Once again, Kenny's team flexing its muscles. 43 points out of his running back, Adrian Peterson, 36 points out of his tight end, oldie but goodie, Antonio Gates, and 22 points out of Seattle Seahawks defense. Where Chris got 21 points out of his quarterback, Andrew Luck, he got 15 points out of his newly acquired tight end, Jordan Cameron, and 18 points out of his running back, Jamal Charles. Now, Chris, I'm sure that you felt fortunate to be facing your son on a week where he didn't have Aaron Rodgers, and yet he still racks up 165 points. When this team's clicking like that, if he had Aaron Rodgers in there, he could have been threatening a 200 total point score. Yikes, guys. That is a contender and one to watch out for. Kenny moves to 3-1. Chris drops to 2-2. And up next, we've got a match that was watched closely around the Fanatics office, and that is Jeff Zeminski's Paper Tigers taking on the before-mentioned Mike Bond and Eastfall Jedi. And Mike gets finally in the win column here with a 158 to 107 walloping of Jeff's Paper Tiger, much to the genius move of inserting Nate Washington into his starting roster for 39 points. He also got 33 points out of his quarterback, Matt Ryan, and 28 points Monday night out of his running back, Darren Sproles. Where Jeff got 24 points out of his running back, Frank Gore, 20 points out of the Saints defense, and 18 points out of his quarterback, Matthew Stafford. So, Mike, once again, I want to congratulate you on that brilliant pick and insertion of Nate Washington. I'm sure that it will pay dividends the entire season. Please make sure you play him weekly because he is assured to put up 39 points every single week. And in the last matchup of last week, we have the final member of the Long contingent, Greg Long, taking on Little Bobby Crane and Julius Jones. Now, I just want to say this, that in this match, Bob thought he was taking on Kenny for the second time in 4 weeks. I just want to make sure that you're aware that this is Greg this time who kicked your ass, Bobby. 163 to 104, another strong showing for one of the Long kids. Greg got 35 points out of Peyton Manning, who's having a crazy season, 25 points out of his Chiefs defense, and 27 points out of his running back, Arian Foster, who most of us just turned around and voted as the most disappointing first-round draft pick. So maybe, that was a little premature in the sense of voting him that way. I still think it's Ray Rice. Also, on the other side, Bob got 44 points out of his quarterback, Drew Brees. He got 10 points out of Ryan Matthews, 10 points out of Bilal Powell, and 10 points out of Calvin Johnson, where he also got 18 points out of his kicker, David Akers. So, guys, I really want to congratulate you on really putting together a really great all-around effort from the league this year. You guys have come a long way since we started this thing 6 years ago. Granted, we have some new faces who've replaced some old ones. I think the new ones that have taken the place of the older ones have clearly brought a better sense of competition. That would be the word I'm looking for, to our league. It's definitely not what it once was when we first started this 6 years ago. And I could actually recall, thinking different things about your teams when we first started, and it's definitely not the case anymore. John Moore actually beat me this week at my own game. I'm thinking I'm going to pick up a defense and grab some extra points. John outdoes me by grabbing a different defense and gets more points out of his. So, John, really kudos to you. My hat goes off to you for that. You've come a long way, as has everybody else and all the new guys. And it really just seems like it seems like yesterday that I was just thinking about putting this league together and trying to figure out who I wanted to have in the league and have some fun. And really, I can remember it like it was yesterday, just sitting up there in my kitchen and trying to figure out who I was going to put in the league and how it would all just fit and mesh. And boy, I better stop surfing the internet and start working on this data RAM cell sheet. Otherwise, Susan Ellman is going to get really angry at me and stop me from working at home while I have my new career here at Meniscus Limited. But this new website, NFLshop.com, seems so interesting. It has all my favorite things. It has all my favorite 49er gear, Alex Smith jerseys, everything. Even Mike Singletary. Boy, he's going to be a good coach. I sure would like to get one of his polos. If only I had enough money that I could afford all my favorite 49er things. But how? I know. I could start a fantasy football league. And I could invite all my friends from Dataram and my new friends from Downingtown and everybody, because I could dominate it. I could invite Chris Long. Yeah, I can invite Chris Long, but I won't invite Mark Maddox, and that'll surely expose Chris for the fraud he is. He might even be able to bring his son on board. That's two. Who else could I? Bobby. Of course, Bobby would get on board right away, and of course he's not going to know anything about fantasy football because he just met that sweet, sweet girl, Amy, who just loves him so much and takes good care of him. So I'll definitely invite Bobby. Who else? Sheehan? He might be drunk. That would be perfect. Then I could invite Steve Simpkins. Steve Simpkins would do it, definitely. Because if he does it, he'll be thinking about his son's acting career and how he can retire off of that. That would be perfect. And then I can invite Nelson. Nelson doesn't even watch football. He'll think it's a soccer fantasy league. Maybe even John Moore could join. John only watches Michigan football. Perfect. And of course, if John comes on board, he's going to draft a quarterback in the first round. He'll probably take Tom Brady. And I bet you Tom Brady breaks his legs as soon as he gets drafted. But if John comes on board, of course, Matt Dreyfus is going to have to get on board because Matt's going to marry John's daughter, and Matt's going to do it. But Matt's not going to be able to win because he can't beat John. Perfect. This plan is golden. Who else can I invite? I know. How could I forget Goldenbaum? Jeff will definitely join because he'll do whatever I ask him to do. He even bowls with me. But you know what the best part about Jeff is? He'll draft Ron Jaworski in the first round. Excellent. And then he'll bring his abacus and he'll tell him, perfect. I can get my brother. My brother will do anything I say. And he doesn't even watch football. And Brian Marshall. Excellent. I bet you this is going to be the best fantasy football league ever. And I'm going to win it every year. Every year. I just got to make sure I can invite anybody I want except Rick. No Rick Wenstrom. This plan is golden. I'm going to win every year. Anyway, let's get to this week's Ask Bobby C. Thank you again, Anthony Parisi. Love it. This week's question comes from Santonio Holmes himself. And he asks, Dear Bobby C., I'm in a fantasy football league where 3 members are part of a family, a father and his 2 boys. Each has their own team, and right now his 2 sons are dominating the league. However, they don't have their own identity because their controlling father won't allow their own email addresses. Everything looks like it's coming from him. I never know who's really speaking. I'm so confused on this situation, it's causing me great anxiety. Can you give me advice on what to do? I hate to complain, but this is just getting the best of me. Yours truly, Santonio Holmes. Dare you to throw me out of the huddle? Well, Bobby C got that question, and he answered you, Santonio. He responded with, Dear Santonio Holmes, I understand how this can cause you great anxiety. It sounds like the father has a history of controlling activities. I wonder if he has a lights out policy at 9 p.m. as soon as the curfew in place. Maybe even the expectations are so high that he won't let them out of the house unless they have hospital corners on their beds. And what makes it more difficult is you don't know who you're really playing and who is in control. On top of that, they are doing any better than the father can cause further issues. I'm not really sure that makes sense. I would try to get this changed so that other league members can communicate better to his boys. This will help with trades as well. Eventually, they will have their own phones, so it's time for the father to let go. Sincerely, Bobby C. Bobby, I don't know what the hell that meant, but I promised you I would read it. So, anyway, good luck to you. Guys, let's get to this coming week's matchup. Alright, so let's get to the coming week's matchups so we can figure out who's going to step up and become real contenders in this league and who's going to be with myself, a pretender. But first, let's get this one out of the way. First matchup is the Abyss match between myself and Jeff Hezekiah Golden Bomb. Neither one of us really looks like we're going to have any kind of a chance in this league, so the only bragging we're going to have is who's going to take on who in this matchup. So, right off the bat, let me take a quick peek at it. Let me tell you where I'm thinking the advantage lies. I know Jeff already, well, thanks Jeff. He has nobody in his starting roster right now. So I guess he's keeping it a surprise. But I know he's got a lot of people on bye week this week. He's been complaining about that since the draft, that our matchup was going to be hindered by people on bye weeks. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say I will win this week. And Jeff will be left alone in last place, and at least I won't have that moniker on me this year. I might have a lot on me this year, but that one will not be. Up next, we've got... Oh, this is a great one. This is a really good one, and I'm excited about it. Are you ready for this one? We've got the Gladiators, Kenny's team, taking on John Moore's Downingtown Destroyers. Right now, ESPN has it projected at a 101 to 100 score, with Kenny's team edging John by 1 point. Let me look at it and tell you how I think it's going to go. Aaron Rodgers home against Detroit. Woo! Kaepernick at home against Houston. Advantage automatically goes to Aaron Rodgers there. This is going to be a close one, guys, but I think at the end of the day, we're going to be looking at a Gladiator victory on this one. Up next, we've got Bob Crane's Julius Jones taking on 1 gram equals a pound. Again, I love Brian Sheen's team this week. I think he's got big time advantages at a lot of points. And interestingly enough, right now it looks like he's getting ready to start Phillip Rivers at Oakland. Why wouldn't you? That's a brilliant plan right now. Whoever would have thought that Phillip Rivers is actually a viable fantasy starter right now. Up next, we've got Matt Dreyfus is off in the corner taking on Chris Long's Asgardian Thunder Gods. Wow. Right now we got a 99 to 83 projection with Chris taking it. I don't know if I agree with that 100%. Cam Newton in the desert against Arizona, I think he's going to have a big-time game. I also think Chris Johnson could have a decent game, although it is against Kansas City, but it is home in Tennessee. The Monte Ball trade, Matt, is going to come back and bite you in the ass. Trading away Deshaun Jackson to Jeff Zeminski is going to be something you're going to regret all season. Chris, I like your matchup in this one a little bit more. I love Giovanni Bernard. Jamal Charles at Tennessee, it's a big one. Julio Jones against the Jets. Gotta love it. I'm going to go with you, Chris. Up next, we've got East Fall Jedi, Mike Bond's team, with Nate Washington. Ooh, he's got Nate Washington. Look out, Greg. You might be in trouble this week. No way. Greg, you will crush him this week. Peyton Manning at Dallas. Dallas is nothing to be scared of. I think that you're going to have a tremendous game this week, Greg, and I think you're going to improve. Mike, I think at the end of the day, you and I are going to be tied with the same record, and that is 1 win. And last matchup of this coming week, and this is one that I know Jeff Zeminski is going to be looking forward to. Jeff, you're taking on Anthony Parisi. You guys, interestingly enough, both have the same record. And as of right now, the projections have you both tied at 106. This is a crazy crazy projection. I don't know how that could possibly be. Stafford, you got to love him. You've got Tom Brady, Anthony at Cincinnati. I'm going to go, and this is going to kill me to say it, I think Jeff wins this one. All right, guys. So listen, the rest of the season out, this is what I'm thinking. I want to see all members of the long contingent in the playoffs this year. The reason I want to see it this year that way is because nobody made it last year. So I want to see that. I want to see Brian Sheehan make the playoffs this year. I want to see Brian make the playoffs this year because that way I could feel at least I had some kind of hand in helping form a championship team with all those pieces I gave Brian, those missing pieces that he needed. Trent Richardson is only going to get stronger for him, and Larry Fitzgerald will get back quickly from his hamstring injury. I want to see John Moore make the playoffs. Of course I want to see John make it. He's one of the only people, I think he is the only player in our league who has not made the playoffs. I want to see him make the playoffs. And lastly, I want to see Anthony Parisi make the playoffs. In fact, I want to see Anthony Parisi win the whole thing. He lost to me in the championship game last year. He took shit from everybody in our league after the draft, and he still has an abysmal team in terms of, bench players. He still has almost every guy that's on his bench on the IR. But he's winning. We made fun of that Reggie Bush pick, and right now Reggie Bush is one of the highest producing running backs in football. I want to see Anthony make the playoffs, and I want to see him win it. And who do I want to see him beat in that game? I want to see him beat Brian Sheehan in the championship game. And that's what I'm seeing right now. Guys, I'll talk to you next week. Until then, I'm League Commissioner Kevin Babula. Bye!